Next on the news, no progress in the latest rounds of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, which means no ceasefire to allow civilians to safely get out of harm's way. And worldwide outrage over the deadly bombing of a maternity hospital, which killed at least 3 people, including a child. The plight of Haitian migrants and the life-threatening measures many take for a better life. We'll meet an attorney who's made it her life's work to help them. Plus, 8th graders at St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Academy have what it takes to win. They're ready for a big robotics competition this weekend. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Once again, ceasefire talks fail as Ukrainian President Zelensky denounces Russia's deadly attack on a children's hospital and maternity ward, calling it genocide. There was no progress in the latest round of talks between the foreign ministers of Russia and Ukraine. No ceasefire and no plans for a humanitarian corridor for civilians. The latest round of talks come as Vice President Kamala Harris meets with officials in Poland to assure America's commitment to its NATO allies. Our coverage begins with Chris Wynn in Washington.
The latest round of high-level talks between Russia and Ukraine ended Thursday with no progress.
I came here with a humanitarian purpose, to walk out from the meeting with the decision to arrange a humanitarian corridor in and from Mariupol. Unfortunately, Minister Lavrov was not in a position to commit himself to it.
A request for a 24-hour ceasefire was also shut down by Russia's foreign minister, who once again falsely claimed Russia was not attacking civilians.
We do not plan to attack other countries, and we did not attack Ukraine.
Ukraine continues to ask NATO to establish a no-fly zone over their country, a request NATO allies have resisted. It's a step many fear could spark a wider war, a war Ukraine says has already hit a global scale.
2 million of refugees in Europe. The nuclear threat, because Putin continues shelling the nuclear plants in Ukraine, which brings up a tremendous threat to the whole world.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris visited Poland to underscore America's commitment with its NATO ally after shutting down Poland's offer to get fighter jets to Ukraine. The U.S. also supplied 2 Patriot missiles batteries to Poland for defensive purposes.
The United States takes seriously that an attack against one is an attack against all.
In Washington, Chris Wynn, Currents News.
The Vatican says it's unlikely that the Pope will meet again with Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill. The Vatican says recent remarks made by the Patriarch will only make tensions in the war worse, adding a second meeting with Pope Francis is unlikely. Kirill, who until recently refrained from making any direct remarks about the war, delivered 2 sermons where he conveyed a clear pro-Russia position in line with President Vladimir Putin. For many in Ukraine, fears of escalating violence have already become reality. This after a Russian airstrike devastated a children's hospital and maternity ward in the besieged city of Mariupol. As Sam Kiley reports, the attack happened during what was supposed to be a ceasefire.
We're really stretched. Whatever cars you have, send them here. He says airstrike, maternity hospital. This was Russia's response to a global appeal for a ceasefire to evacuate a city of 1 million people. A bomb dropped next to a maternity hospital in Mariupol. It's hospital number 3. Inside, a frantic search for survivors. Early reports say that there were more than a dozen injured. A miraculous outcome to an attempt to a mass killing at a place where lives should begin. Many women and children had already fled to underground bunkers after a week of Russian bombardment. Ukraine's president renewed his pleas for NATO to drive Russia from his nation's skies after the hospital airstrike.
Everything that the occupiers do with Mariupol is already beyond atrocity. Europeans, Ukrainians, citizens of Mariupol, today, we must be united in condemning this war crime of Russia.
Evacuations from other towns have been more successful, but still very limited. Around 700 people, mostly women and children, were bussed out of Energoda, the site of Europe's biggest nuclear reactor, which was captured recently by Russia.
The shops are empty. There's nothing there. Not enough medical supplies. We're tired. We need to eat and rest.
It may seem extraordinary, but these are the lucky ones. They've escaped from the shadow of a nuclear power station and the clutches of Russian troops. But in comparison to what people are enduring in Mariupol, this is good fortune. Yulia Karyulan volunteers at a refugee centre in Zaporizhia set up to receive people fleeing her hometown of Mariupol. It's empty. She's been waiting a week for news from home of her husband Evgeny and daughter Yasia. This morning, she got a brief call. How's your daughter doing?
My daughter told me she loves me.
Of course she does.
Actually, how she's alive, she's doing like all other children doing now in Mariupol, almost no food, no drinking water, no electricity. It was -5 this night. They have no heating, they're just sitting in a cold basement in some cots.
Her small family is living in a bomb shelter with hundreds of others. She says they can only survive another few days. Then they will have to surface, perhaps to face more of this. Sam Kiley, Zaporizhia.
St. John Paul II's former residence in Poland has opened its doors to refugees. The Bishop's Palace, where the Pope lived when he was Archbishop, is welcoming Ukrainians who were forced to flee their homes. The Archdiocese of Krakow says every parish is involved in the effort to welcome refugees. So far, several thousand are being housed in rectories, religious houses, and other church buildings. And there on the ground helping people in both Poland and Ukraine are the Knights of Columbus. Councils from both countries sprung into action when the Russian invasion broke out. And with the help of Supreme Knight Patrick Kelly, the organization established the Ukraine Solidarity Fund. So far, they've received more than $4.5 million in donations, which will help provide shelter, food, clothing, and medical supplies to the people of Ukraine. Catholic school students in the Diocese of Brooklyn are also helping out. The kids at St. Mark's Catholic Academy in Sheepshead Bay held a special dress down fundraiser for the children of Ukraine Monday. And get this, the school was able to raise over $2,000 for Voices of Children, a charity foundation that provides psychological and psychosocial support for children impacted by war. If you'd like to join in and send help to the people of Ukraine, just go to thetablet.org/where to give to help Ukraine. There you can find a list of reputable charities working on the ground. The U.S. government is also pitching in. The House of Representatives passed a $13.6 billion emergency aid bill for Ukraine Wednesday night. The money will be set aside for defense, economic assistance, and humanitarian aid. There's also $4 billion to help refugees, as well as provisions to enforce sanctions against Russia. Now the pressure is on for Senate lawmakers to approve the measure and send it to President Biden for his signature. The measure comes as inflation in the U.S. hits a 40-year record high, propelled by surging costs for gas, food, and housing. Consumer inflation has jumped by nearly 8% over the past year, the sharpest spike the country has seen since 1982. This, according to the Department of Labor, which clarified that their study did not include the oil and gas price surges that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And those prices just keep going up. You've probably noticed every day it costs more to fill up your gas tank, and drivers everywhere are feeling the pain at the pump. For up to 15 hours a day, New York City cab driver Wayne Chen looks for passengers.
I drive like 150 miles on an average day, yeah.
But with business still down pre-pandemic and gas prices at a record high, he says he's barely surviving.
Most of the gas stations are expensive anywhere you go.
And his pricey taxi medallion needed to operate costs him almost $2,000 a month. With 3 boys on their way to college, the extra $100 he's spending a week on gas for his Prius is eating into his savings.
Make enough money for them to go to college, I worry. But right now, I'm not making enough, we're just surviving here.
He comes from a family of survivors. His grandparents, refugees, fled China during World War II.
Watching the news from Ukraine, it saddened me because compared to what those people are going through, I don't mind paying more because They are very suffering. You know, my own family, like my grandparents, they're going through this.
This week, President Joe Biden banned the import of Russian oil, gas, and coal, accounting for 8% of the U.S. energy supply. Some analysts estimate with inflation and now the war, it could push the national average over $5 a gallon.
Everything has just gone skyrocket.
Small business owner Dave Lemos is already paying more than $5 a gallon in Los Angeles. He says he drives 450 miles a week for work.
We're hitting close to about $2,300 over budget on things that we never thought we had to even worry about, on gas and travel and couriers and stuff.
Back across the coast, retirees John and Pat Grasso were on their way back to the Bronx from a weekend trip in South Jersey.
Just talking about, it's going to cost us an extra like 30 or 40 cents a gallon since we left 2 days ago.
President Biden authorized the release of 30 million additional barrels of oil from the nation's reserve, trying to offset rising prices. The world consumes 100 million barrels of oil a day. Will it make a difference?
It's very difficult to say, but I am willing to pay higher prices at the gas.
I am too. I'm willing to sacrifice and pay for the people that are suffering in Ukraine.
But Robert Harral isn't so sure paying more will have any impact on Putin's all-out war.
That's not going to work. He wants to fight.
As of Thursday, the average price for a gallon of gas nationally was $4.34. Exactly a month ago, it was nearly 90 cents less at $3.46 a gallon. The situation is even worse in New York City, where you have to shell out, on average, $4.49 a gallon, inching up to that $5 mark. There's a lot more news headed your way. They are desperate and taking dangerous risks. What's being done to help Haitian migrants in search of a better life? Also, gearing up to compete. We'll meet the students at St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Academy getting ready for a big robotics competition this weekend. And will Brooklyn's VA hospital close its doors under a new White House plan? We're learning more about that boat carrying hundreds of Haitian migrants to Florida over the weekend. U.S. Customs and Border Protection now says it was not a case of human smuggling. They determined that due to the type of boat used. This was an old wooden boat, and they say smugglers typically use speedboats or cabin cruisers. The boat was overcrowded and seemed on the verge of capsizing. Some of the migrants who tried to swim to shore needed medical assistance. We spoke with Miami Archbishop Thomas Wensky about it.
This is not the first or second time that Haitians have arrived near Key Largo or other places along the coast of Florida, and Haitians are risking a very dangerous sea voyage with a slim chance of having the possibility of staying in the United States and building a future for themselves.
Archbishop Wensky says about 32 lawyers are currently working full-time in the Archdiocese of Miami to provide low-cost or free immigration services to about 1,200 people every month. One person who knows all about the plight of Haitian migrants and the treacherous journeys many of them take to get to the U.S. is Vanessa Joseph. She's an immigration attorney at Catholic Legal Services in Miami and joins us now. Vanessa, you've been helping immigrants since you were in law school, and I know you have a passion for Haitian migrants in particular. Why is that, and what goes through your head when you see images like we just saw of that boat filled with migrants?
Well, to start, thank you so much for the invitation to participate today. And being passionate about Haitian migrants isn't hard. It isn't something that I had to personally develop because I am Haitian. And I'm not just fond of the Haitian community, just also very much passionate about Black immigrants in general. And that is because of the fact that I know that immigration is often seen through strictly a Latino lens and not really taking into account the plight of Black immigrants as a whole.
So what do you think? What goes through your head when you see those pictures and that video of these migrants, 150 to 200 of them on that wooden boat coming here to the U.S.?
It's certainly heartbreaking to see images like that, because then you ask yourself, well, how are they being treated? We recall the images at the border, and remember how Haitian immigrants were being lassoed and whipped at the border. And now you think about what could be happening to these individuals who are seeking a much better life over here at our shores. And so that was definitely a primary concern. But then secondarily, would they have an opportunity to be able to seek asylum, as I know many of them were? It's definitely heartbreaking to know that people are unable or unwilling to return to their homes because of how treacherous the situation is for them at home, how dangerous that situation is.
In our conversation with Miami Archbishop Thomas Wensky, he said it's nothing new that the migrants go on these dangerous trips because they tell him the teeth of the shark are sweeter than misery. What do the migrants tell you?
Many of them have extremely difficult stories to listen to about the reasons that they felt forced to leave their country. And they talk about the way in which the potential promise of liberty and safety and refuge makes them believe that it is much better to brave the seas, to brave the jungles, and arrive in the United States however that they can. Many people fear a certain death in Haiti and believe that even just the ability to touch the United States will give them the protection that they need from that certain death that they believe they'll face back home.
Wow. Vanessa Joseph, Catholic Legal Services immigration attorney, thanks so much for the insight today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now to Brooklyn, where the 8th grade robotics team from St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Academy is headed to the first Lego League Challenge citywide championship this weekend. They have a robot that's looking to solve a problem many of us have experienced: package theft. Our Jessica Easthope has more on their last preparations before the big day.
At St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Academy, it's robots to the rescue. On a mission to solve a problem that affects more than 64% of Americans: package theft.
The average person always experiences some sort of difficulty, and package theft is one of those difficulties that we might be able to solve with our technology.
The school's 8th grade robotics team is on its way to the first Lego League Challenge City Championship. The theme of the competition is Cargo Connect. They were asked to solve a problem and then build and program a robot that could solve it. The team didn't have to look farther than their front doors.
I knew that it was like a global thing happening, and since I've experienced it personally, I guess I just wanted to get really into it.
In 2021, a survey by Safewise found that 210 million packages vanished from porches all across the country. The team's solution is airtight.
The solution to package theft was to create a scanner that connects to automatic lock.
They came up with a QR code scanner that would allow delivery people into a mailbox or locker outside of a home instead of having to go in. Robotics coach and technology teacher Lisa Nitschi says the team is letting faith and technology lead the way.
It does tie in with caring for others and thinking of others.
And this team is the total package.
For Edmund, he's able to calculate how many degrees the robot should go. It's up in there, and mostly do the writing.
They're preparing for the competition and for life after elementary school.
The teamwork and the problem solving and using different technologies and doing the research, that kind of stuff is preparing them for further from here.
The students will be competing against 75 other teams in the citywide championship on Sunday. In Windsor Terrace, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
The Biden administration wants to close 2 VA hospitals in New York City. The facility in Bay Ridge and one in Manhattan could be shut down, and the VA will contract with private providers to treat vets. Brooklyn's VA hospital is in Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis' district, and she plans to fight the closures, according to the New York Post. The VA Medical Center in the Bronx is not affected by the proposal. Health officials are keeping an eye on a new sub-variant of COVID-19 that has emerged. Some experts are calling it Omicron 2. It's an offshoot of the original and is said to be just as severe, but it spreads about 30% faster. But health officials say it's unlikely that it will cause much harm in New York because of our high vaccination rate. Meanwhile, in Washington, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi cut almost $16 billion in COVID-19 relief funds out of the omnibus spending bill.
Unfortunately, you had to have 60 votes in the Senate, and we couldn't get 60 votes without taking money out of the state allocations that were in the rescue package.
Democrats want to appease Republicans by offsetting the cost of COVID relief with funds from last year's pandemic relief bill. But Democrats representing states that would be affected say their constituents would lose money they had been promised. A new survey finds that concerns about COVID-19 caused more than 40% of workers to miss work during the Omicron surge. That's according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. 1,500 adults were surveyed. The results also showed that low-income workers were even more likely to have missed work. About 6 in 10 say they had to call out sick. Still to come on Currents News, creating lifelong readers. Special guests visit diocesan schools to share their love of books with students. And gratitude for first responders who braved a smoky fire to rescue a fur baby. The amazing story is ahead. I'm sure you've heard of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? Well, this week is all about the first R. It's the Great Diocesan Read Aloud.
Picked up Kaylee and said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "My bike hit a rock and my handlebars came out."
I was able to share my love of reading with the children at Our Lady of the Snows Catholic Academy in Queens. I read a book called A Little Respect Cultivates Kindness to a pre-K class there. The Great Diocesan Read Aloud is organized by DeSales Media Group. That's Net TV's parent company. And you can read all about this special event in the Diocese of Brooklyn in next week's tablet. You can pick up a copy at your church or subscribe at thetablet.org to get the paper delivered to your home. Now to a heartwarming story out of D.C. A dog reunited with the first responders who helped save her life after a house fire last year. And as Caroline Petrikis reports, the reunion gave her owners the opportunity to thank the rescuers.
We're celebrating Charlie's 3rd birthday today, which we wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't for these wonderful, brave men and women.
It was a heartwarming reunion on Tuesday.
Forgive me for my tears.
As the owners of Miss Charlie, this lab hound mix, were reunited with the D.C. firefighters who saved her dog from a burning home.
We were 6,000 miles away when we got the call that our house was on fire. And of course, the main thing that we were concerned about was our dog.
D.C. Fire and EMS jumped into action that day.
I immediately approached firefighter Reed and said I would take over with the care of the dog. The dog was laying there lifeless, breathing very deep and shallow. He had a lot of mucus coming out of his mouth from the face mask. So I immediately took the face mask off his face. I cleared this airway out.
D.C. firefighters say Charlie spent 4 days on oxygen at a D.C. animal hospital fighting for her life. She was exposed to heavy smoke conditions after the fire.
So we just want to say thank you to everybody for everything.
Again, that was Caroline Petrikis reporting. And finally, we are so excited to introduce you to the newest member of the Currents News team. Meet Sienna Juliet. Isn't she adorable? This beautiful baby girl is the brand new daughter of our assignment editor Raquel DeLuca and her husband Andrea. Sienna came into the world very early Thursday morning, just before 3:30 a.m., weighing in at 7 pounds 10 ounces. Mom and baby are doing great. So congratulations again, Raquel. Cannot wait to meet her. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.